she's sitting across from her therapist 3 years after leaving, and she still can't finish the sentence. She starts it, stops, tries again. The therapist waits. Finally, she says, "I knew something was wrong. I knew it from the beginning." And then she goes quiet again. Because here's the part she can't say out loud yet. She didn't stay because she was foolish. She didn't stay because she missed the signs. She stayed because her brain was doing exactly what a healthy brain does when it's been deliberately, methodically rewired. So the question isn't why smart women fall for this. The question is, how would you even know if it was already happening to you? Let's talk about Alina. Not her real name, but the details, the city, the relationship, the specific way it ended, those are real. She was 31 when she met him. A litigation attorney. The kind of woman who could read a room in seconds, who had built her entire career on spotting inconsistencies, on noticing what people were trying to hide. Her colleagues described her as sharp. Her friends said she was the one they called when something felt wrong, and they couldn't figure out why. She met Daniel at a work function. He was quiet in a way that felt considered, not shy. He remembered the exact thing she said in their first conversation and brought it up 3 weeks later. She noticed that. She thought it meant he was paying attention. It did mean he was paying attention. That's the detail that stays with you if you let it. The first few months looked like what love is supposed to look like. He was consistent, present. He had this way of making her feel like the most interesting person in the room, not through flattery, but through genuine seeming curiosity. He asked questions. He listened to the answers. He made her feel, for the first time in a long time, completely known. And that feeling, being known, is one of the most powerful psychological experiences a human being can have. Researchers who study attachment will tell you that feeling truly seen by another person activates the same reward pathways as food, as warmth, as survival. It is not a luxury. It is something the nervous system interprets as necessary. Daniel understood this. Whether he understood it consciously or instinctively is something Alina still wonders about. The first thing she noticed, and then immediately unnoticed, was how he responded when she spent time without him. Not anger, nothing that obvious, just a kind of quiet withdrawal. A coolness that lasted exactly long enough for her to feel its absence. And then, when she'd reach toward him, when she'd check in or explain or soften something she hadn't realized needed softening, he'd return. Warm again. Relieved, almost. She didn't recognize this as a pattern. She recognized it as chemistry. as the natural push and pull of two people figuring each other out. She was a smart woman. She knew what manipulation looked like. She had read about it. She had advised friends about it. And this didn't look like that, because it wasn't designed to. About 8 months in, something shifted. It happened slowly enough that there was no single moment she could point to later. Her friendships began to thin, not because he asked her to stop seeing people, but because spending time with friends had started to feel complicated in ways it never used to. There was always something to manage afterward. A comment he'd made that she'd be turning over in her mind on the drive home. A question about why she'd mentioned a certain person, a certain conversation. The questions were never accusatory. They were curious, interested, concerned. He never told her who she could see. He just made it quietly costly to see them. And here is where the psychology becomes something that most people don't want to look at directly. Alina's brain was not failing her. Her brain was doing something extraordinarily sophisticated. It was building a map of safety, constantly, the way all of our brains do, cataloging which behaviors produced warmth and which produced distance, which version of herself felt secure and which felt precarious. And over months of careful, patient conditioning, Daniel had become the primary reference point for that map. Without her awareness, without her consent, with her full, intelligent, voluntary participation. Because she didn't know she was participating in anything other than a relationship. This is the part that trauma therapists spend years trying to explain to survivors who cannot stop blaming themselves. The rewiring doesn't feel like rewiring. It feels like growing. It feels like becoming more attuned to someone you love. The brain is not broken during this process. It is working exactly as designed. It is adapting to its environment. The problem is the environment was engineered. By the time Alina noticed, something was genuinely wrong, not just complicated, not just hard, but wrong. She was 2 years in, and the wrongness was subtle enough that she couldn't explain it to anyone without sounding like she was describing something ordinary. "He's a little controlling," her friend might have said. "Yeah, but it's more than that," Alina would start to answer. And then stop, because she couldn't find the words for something that had been specifically constructed to resist language. She stayed another 7 months after that first clear knowing. And this is the part people always want to understand. Why? Why, if she knew, did she stay? Because knowing and leaving are not the same thing. Because by that point, her nervous system had been trained to interpret his presence as calm and his absence as danger. Not emotionally, physiologically. Her body had learned something her mind hadn't agreed to, because she had watched herself over and over choose him. and each choice had quietly become evidence. Evidence that she wanted this, that she had decided that if it were really that bad, she would have left by now. The logic of staying becomes its own trap. Because he never hit her, and she had always believed she would leave if someone hit her. Because the version of herself that existed before him had grown so faint, she wasn't sure she could find her way back to it. And that specific erosion of self is what some psychologists now consider the signature injury of psychological abuse. Not the obvious wounds, the quiet disappearance, the slow replacement of your own instincts with his interpretations of them. She didn't lose herself all at once. She lost herself in moments she thought were love. There is a particular kind of grief that has no name yet. The grief of realizing that the love was real yours anyway, and that real love was used as the mechanism of harm. That your capacity for trust, for depth, for genuine connection was not a weakness he exploited. It was a strength, and it was studied and mapped and used. That's what she couldn't finish saying to her therapist. Not that she was fooled, not that she missed the signs, but that she had brought everything good in herself into that relationship, and it had been enough. It had been exactly enough for what he needed to do. The women who fall for this are not the ones who weren't paying attention. They are often the ones who were paying the most attention, who cared the most, who tried the hardest, who believed most fully in the possibility of being truly known by another person. That belief is not naive. It is one of the most human things there is. And some people know exactly how to find it. If something in this felt familiar, not necessarily in someone else's story, but in your own, sit with that for a moment. Don't explain it away yet. Don't decide immediately that it doesn't apply to you, that your situation is different, that you're probably just overthinking. That instinct to dismiss your own unease is worth examining. The women who most need to hear this are often the first ones to decide it isn't about them. There's more. There's always more. And if you want to keep looking at it, we'll be here